I woke to a light I had not tended, and the world felt newly wrong and wonderfully right. For centuries, my hands knew the weight of glass and lid, the hush of a jar breathing like a pocketed sky, and my nights were measured in the tiny, stubborn heartbeats of captive stars. Morning arrived, not with the made light of firefly jars, but with rain that was honest and cold and indifferent to the stories I carried, and the world breathed differently. I opened the door and let the rain write itself on my face, and laughter spilled out of me like a thing I had been concealing for years. The fog folded back its hands and allowed me to be small and enormous at once, and I felt the dizzying, blessed terror of being truly mortal. Stomach knotted, skin damp, lungs testing the novelty of unbound air. I walked to the village with hunger that felt like a small, demanding animal, and my shoes remembered how to tread on stones not designed for ritual, but for ordinary passage. At a little stall, steam rose like a soft excuse, and the woman behind it moved with the cheerful certainty of people who trade in comfort, not penance. I tried rice for the first time in living memory, and thought its softness was a kind of forgiveness. And the kimchi cut sharp and honest, a bright knife of flavor that made me think of grief that bruises and then teaches. A bowl of spicy stew made my eyes water with something clean and human. I did not need to tend it or pray over it, only to taste it and be surprised into gratitude. Across from me sat a man whose hands betrayed him as someone who bought too many dumplings because he hated leaving things unfinished. And he ate with a modest hunger that was not performative, but real. He looked at me as if he were cataloging small possibilities, the way my fingers trembled when I lifted a spoon, the way my laugh was new and nodded with amazement. We spoke in fragments at first, not because we had secrets, but because both of us were practicing the grammar of ordinary kindness. And the conversation felt like learning to walk again. He offered me a dumpling he had bought and did not want to waste, and his gesture was simple and terrible in its power. It asked nothing of me but to accept a piece of the day. Our hands brushed over a shared plate, the contact light as moth wings, and that small touch felt like the beginning of something ruinous and holy in equal measure. I thought of the jars and the fireflies, and how I had once tried to keep memory like captive light, fearing that release meant erasure. And now I understood how keeping had been a cruelty disguised as devotion. To preserve every small glow was to live in perpetual exile from the messy, redeeming chores of life. To cook, to argue, to grow tired and to be boring, and to wake with the ordinary ache of being human. The man did not rescue me with dramatic words or impossible promises. He simply shared his meal and his ordinary presence. And the ordinary is what I had been forbidden and therefore had yearned for most. After we parted, I walked back through streets that smelled of wet earth and bread. And each step felt like an unspooling of a cord that had bound my ankles for years. I passed the cottage at dusk. Its windows were warm and shut, a little island of twilight, and the jars on the shelves were fewer but not empty. As if some memories are meant to remain lit in small kindnesses rather than hoarded like trophies. The forest no longer demanded me, but it did not resent me either. It inhaled and exhaled on its own terms, and I felt oddly unshackled and scared by the fact that my choices would now wear the weight of consequence. When sleep came that night, it was ordinary and thin and full of small noises. A dog barking, wind in a gutter, the ticking of a clock I had never learned to hear while I was immortal. I dreamed of him, not as a grand revenant, but as a man who laughed at the wrong moments, and burned toast, and loved the way sunlight landed on the sill. and I woke with the taste of coincidence like a fresh hope. Freedom is both small and enormous. The smallness of hands that can make soup, and the enormity of knowing that every meal might end for good. I am mortal now, and mortality is a terrible, beautiful teacher. It forces you to keep things, not to hoard light, but to share it. Not to mend the impossible with selfishness, but to let the world mend us in ways we cannot predict.